Welcome everyone back to the Pommy in Oz channel, and I am joined by first-time guest, but long-time friend of the channel, I would say. I have got Supercoach icon, maybe legend, I would say. We've got DAMO. You will see him on the Jock Reynolds podcast. You've got Code AFU, and he's also featured on the Herald Sun page as well. DAMO, how are you doing, my favourite Freo fan?
Your favourite Freo fan? I think that's the best intro I've ever had.
I tried.
I'm quite well. I'm really pumped for the footy coming up. I'm happy that it's just around the corner. I feel like I've been waiting a very long time for it to come back.
I feel like I have to pick your brains as you're a Supercoach expert. Is it normal to change your team about 12 times a day?
12 times a day? I change my team 12 times an hour.
Yeah, I was going to say, I keep reading things or hearing things over the water cooler at work and be like, oh, better get him in. And
Yeah.
It looks totally different. But every time I click save, I convince myself it's the best team in the world.
Sometimes people will say something and I'll have a look to see if I can fit him in somehow without removing someone I really like. And sometimes I have to just, grin and bear it that I can't fit them in. And then I'll go and look at it about 2 hours later and then I'll be like, okay, I have to do it now. I have to do it now. This person's going, I'm putting this person in.
I do feel better that an expert as opposed to an amateur does it as well. I was just thinking that's maybe why I'm rubbish at it, because I changed the team so much. But that is good. But we're here to talk about your Dockers plays the Saints in Marvel, the last fixture of the round. And this has got a wonderful subplot as well, because obviously Ross the boss was a coach with you guys, now at a new club. What are your initial thoughts leading into this game?
It'll be interesting to see how much Justin Longmuir has changed the game plan and how much Ross Lyon still remembers about how his players that he used to coach play. A large chunk of them that are in the team now, he would have coached, and he would like to think he knows inside and out a little bit, but it's been 3 years. So how much has Justin Longmuir changed in their minds? What has he changed mentally? What has he changed systematically? And it's really going to be interesting to see how Ross Lyon matches up against the Dockers. But when the Dockers played against St Kilda, like when he was in charge, so back before then, he couldn't work out St Kilda. Even though he had coached a large number of the players that he was playing against, Fremantle would get thumped by St Kilda because he could not work out the matchups. And I don't know if it was him sort of not wanting to get in the bad books with all these players that he liked, or if there was just a genuine systematic mental change that had come from the new coach. So it's going to be interesting to see how Justin Longmuir has changed the club compared to how Ross Lyon had it, and how much Ross Lyon can remember from coaching these players that he had on his list a little while ago.
Is there a little wary nature as well? Because St Kilda have an injury list that rivals one of the great battlefields of Europe at the moment. Like, I'd imagine members are going to get picked to play if it keeps going this way. Is there a little bit of a worry, though? Because obviously that wounded bear is one of the dangerous ones, isn't it? And on paper, I hate to say it for St Kilda's sake, it does look a foregone conclusion Fremantle win this game.
I mean, he coached the Dockers to a grand final in 2013, where Matthew Pavlich only played about 6 games of the season. Most of the issues are in the forward line, and for some reason, Fremantle have a very good knack of allowing that bit part forward that's come in on his 4th game to kick 8 goals for some reason. Like we all saw it last year with Ollie Henry playing full forward for Collingwood. The Dockers couldn't stop him because they didn't know who he was or what he could produce.
It's one of them things. I mean, yeah, St Kilda, as a Carlton fan, for some reason we can't break them as well, and it infuriates me as a fan, because they are a wily cat under Ratton, but now they've got Ross, who I would say is probably the master of playing unsexy football, isn't he? I think that's a fair statement.
I said the other day on a different podcast, his game plan gives me PTSD. Just seeing the ball move so slowly, but it somehow works and gets out and you get wins. It's just not pretty and boring to watch. So I don't know if this weekend's game is going to be much of a much of a spectacle, but he says he's changed. So we'll see how much he's changed.
It'd be impressive. And this is probably a tough question because obviously we're basing Ross on old Ross and he says he's new Ross. So be interesting to see what he's added. But how do you think you beat St Kilda? When you look at their best 23, what are you looking for from your boys that you think you can exploit them and hurt them?
I think if the back line can exploit the inexperienced forward line that they will probably line up with, that's probably going to be how the Dockers can really cause pain on the scoreboard through that slingshot from Heath Chapman, Luke Ryan, Jordan Clark, Hayden Young, all of those sorts of players. I imagine it'll be a fairly even clearance battle. It'll be Rowan Marshall against Shaun Darcy, fairly even in the middle. It will be about the defense exploiting that probably inexperienced forward line to rebound the ball and for the Dockers forward line to then finish the job.
There is someone I'm excited about as well in your change-up as well. I think you've got one of the most exciting midfielders in the comp outside of probably Carlton. I think both of our sides, very young midfield now with Nat Fyfe going forward. And he's one guy I want to talk about. What do you think of Nat Fyfe going forward? Because I always look back to 3 years ago when we had AFLX and Jack Rewalt talking about Cripper and saying because he's not quite the size of a forward, but he has superhuman strength like Nat Fyfe does, it's the perfect forward because he's so hard to match up on for that third, second defender. I think you're going to get a lot of goals, and I think Nat Fyfe could be the answer to much publicised Freo's goal-kicking issues.
Yeah, I mean, after seeing him live against Port Adelaide a few weeks ago in the preseason game at Fremantle Oval, I'm finding it very hard to see how he doesn't have an impact in the upcoming season. And they've said multiple times that he's not done with the midfield. It's just the forward lines where they think he can provide the best impact for them and create, create the space for Andrew Brayshaw, Caleb Sarong, James Aish, all those sorts of players to have an impact moving forward. And there's even going to be the chance that Luke Jackson and Shaun Darcy attend the same centre bounce, with Luke Jackson being one of those big-bodied, tall midfielders. So I think Nat Fyfe up forward makes a lot of sense. And in his draft year, he actually was billed as a medium forward. So it's not like he hasn't done it before, but he hasn't done it for so long that he's kind of had to relearn it. But I think we will see some of his natural footballing ability come back. And we saw how much of a clearance beast he was at his peak when he won his Brownlow medals. I think if that ball goes anywhere near the forward 50, he'll just do what he would usually do in the centre in the forward line.
I think I watched the preseason game and I was just taken aback by Nat Fyfe. And he's one of my favourite players. I've made no secret on the Pommy and Oz show. He is one of my 5 favourites from opposition and someone that I think I've mentioned many a time on foreign podcasts that if I could steal someone, I've always loved the idea of Fyfe and Cripps together. I think that's an unstoppable force. But I agree. I think him up forward, that intelligence and that savvy and letting the kids do a little bit as well, because I think they've got very talent and using him sparsely in the midfield. I don't think he'll play 100 forward, but I think having that ability to swing him there when he's fresh and he hasn't taken a batter in could be the difference maker for Fremantle.
Yeah, for sure. And he won't be the main forward, but he'll probably get the main defender, which might free up the likes of a Matt Tabiner or Josh Tracy or even Jai Amos to develop a bit faster, because they'll have the second or third tall, and sometimes that third tall isn't really tall at all. And in Port Adelaide's case, it was Ryan Burton, who's only 189 centimeters. So, I mean, he's probably going to take the best defender, and he's not really a key forward, so he kind of can exploit a key defender as well.
I think it'll cause a bit of havoc because we see it when these players who are half and half go forward. teams hate it. Teams do hate it when you see Cripps, when you see Bon, Eagle, the Doggies as well. It does cause, like you say, that chaos, because do you take your best defender to get rid of him, but then obviously sacrifice a little bit of height and power against one of the big guys? Creates them issues, and issues are good in the coaching box, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, it creates panic for the opposition, but if it's paying off for you, you don't touch it.
And who is the key man? We've talked a bit about Fyfe. Who's the key man for you that you think is going to be able to sway it in your favour if the game's tight?
I look back at last season, and if we bring up Rory Lobb briefly, when he missed that Richmond and that Sydney game, the Dockers didn't look great because they didn't have a focal point in the forward line. So it will be interesting to see how much impact Luke Jackson has in that role, and if Matt Taberner can run out the whole game, and whoever goes with those guys, because they're still not sure if it's going to be Sam Sturt, Josh Tracy. Obviously, Nat Fyfe will be down there, but without that focal point, it was kind of like a lost cause, that ball going into the forward line. So I think it will be I think the most important players, I only asked for player, but I'm going to cheat and say players, will be the talls in the forward line.
I'm looking forward to seeing how Luke Jackson goes as well, because I think it's a great acquisition. I am excited to see how him and Darcy operate, because we know Jackson probably has made his career with the best ruckman in the comp. And I don't think there's much dissimilarity with how he'll be used at Fremantle, because we know Darcy will probably be like Gorn and take the predominant amount of rucks anyway. So that's where Jackson thrives, when he's doing his work around the grounds. And I'm excited about seeing that.
Yeah, for sure. But we also know that Shaun Darcy this preseason has worked on being able to impact as a forward. So I'm really interested to see how that works out when they're both fit and ready to go, because obviously Jackson didn't play the second preseason game, so we didn't see that gel together with that 22 that they were probably thinking of.
And who in the opposition side, who do you look at the St Kilda 23, and who do you think we need to stop him? Who's the guy, the danger guy for Saints?
I think the Dockers will need to look out for whoever tags Andrew Brayshaw. I think they will need to help him out with the tag. He did quite well in kind of wrestling his way through it last season, but I think the addition of Jaeger O'Meara has been brought in to kind of help Andy break the shackles of these tags, and it will be a case of Andy moving to maybe other positions on the ground to try and break it, but I think it will depend on who tags him and how long he's tagged for, and how the Dockers manage that. Because I know Andy can move to a wing, he can move to the half forward, he can move to half back if he needs to, but it will be about whoever tags him, whether it's Marcus Windhager, whether it's Jack Steele, whoever it is. I think they're probably the player that the Dockers need to be wary of, because they will want Andy free, and St Kilda won't want him touching the ball.
I love that. And yeah, I think it's been an interesting one, because obviously with Jaeger coming in, I wonder if he plays a role that we saw last year quite a bit, where some of them played them bigger bodies. We know Viney does it a lot for Melbourne, to really try and negate the tagger with physical force. And you see Viney do that a lot, pushing players out of the way to free up his man. Jaeger's pretty accomplished at doing that. He did that at Hawthorn quite a bit, protecting Tom Mitchell and making sure Tom Mitchell had that space to do what he did. So Jaeger's going to be quite an important cog, I think, in that Fremantle midfield.
Yeah, for sure. And with the retirement of David Mundy, they need an experienced body in there to be able to make those calls and do those jobs with that without giving away too many frees.
Well, I mean, it's going to be hard as well. The extra umpire, we expect a lot of them ridiculous threes. But with the team selection, is there anyone you're thinking that's going to make a debut? Any of the young kids, or any shocks? Is there anything that you see in the selection table that may surprise people?
I called it a few weeks ago. It was kind of highlighted by Peter Bell on radio a few nights ago, but I think Michael Walters has every chance to rock up as the sub on Sunday, because I think they're going to give Sam Sturt a run. Whether that is a run with Josh Tracy or not is another thing, so I won't know what Sam Sturt's job security will be unless they're both in the team together. But Sam Sturt's done everything he needs to. He's come from nowhere. No one was talking about him in the preseason. Apparently, he's been one of the best players on the track, but we only found that out about 3 weeks ago. I think he could possibly force his way in, and we see Michael Walters start as the sub on Sunday.
Be an interesting call. Not a bad sub as well. A guy that, if the game's tight, 20 minutes to go, Walters 100%, no energy expelled. He could be a massive game changer, and it's going to be interesting how that sub's used this year, because that could really win some games. Now, the clarity has been opened up on that.
Yeah, and some teams will use it if some teams will have a tall as their sub and go in small. Some teams will have a small as their sub and go in tall, and then they'll sub out as they need. And it might depend on the weather. It might depend on the opposition, how the opposition lines up. It's going to be interesting to see how clubs use it.
It's going to be an interesting one as well, because Richmond won't be able to do that, or he had migraine-like symptoms, which was my favourite medical sub last year, when I was like, just choose something that you can't prove. I like that one.
Yeah, well, now they don't have to make an excuse. They can just make the change.
Well, it makes sense. But, I mean, going into this game, what is your prediction? We're at the final siren. What are we seeing?
I think Fremantle win by about 3 goals.
18. I like that. That's a safe number. I'm with you. I think that the Marvel is a favourite for St Kilda. So I think Ross is hard to break down. I think it's going to be a death by 1,000 cuts, but I think there's too much class. But DAMO, on behalf of the channel, thank you so much for joining us. And as a Carlton fan, wish you the best of luck for 2023, and hope to see you boys in finals.
Thanks, mate, and hopefully Carlton can get in as well.
It'd be nice. It'll make me happy.
Yeah.
But cheers, DAMO. And all the links are in the description for DAMO, where he is. Go and check him out. He's wonderful. And if you're a super coach, buff, or a novice, they'll help you out. But thank you again, DAMO. Look after yourself, and best of luck on Sunday.
Thanks, mate.